In this tutorial, we're going to be looking at control within Scratch using conditional statements. And in a previous tutorial, I looked at conditional statements of if and if else. The if statement, just a quick review, the if statement is the simplest one. It basically checks to see if the condition is true. If the condition is true, then it executes the block of code inside the if statement. And if it's not true, or if it's false, then it doesn't do anything. So that's the simplest conditional statement that you can have in programming. A slightly more complicated, but also a vastly more useful statement is the if-else. This checks to see if a condition is true, and it executes a statement or a block of statements. But if the condition is false, it executes a block of additional statements. So now we actually have a pathway. If something's true, we do one thing. If something's false, we do something else. And that's usually our preferred way of looking at this. For today, we're actually going to look at nested statements, which means I'm going to have blocks within other blocks. So imagine I'm going to choose a very simple scenario where I want to know whether or not a value is greater than, less than, or equal to some other value. So what we'll do is I'm going to ask the user to pick two values. So first I'm going to create a variable for each of those. So I'm going to call value 1, and I'll create another variable called value 2. And then we need to get the user to actually tell us what these things are. So I'm going to ask two questions, and I'm going to get the answers to those two questions. And so the first question is going to be, what is the first value? And the second question will be, what is the second value? And I'm going to save the answers to those questions in a variable, which is something I should always be doing. So set value 1 to the answer to the first question. Set value 2 to be the answer to the second question. So now I've got these two questions that I'm going to ask. And then what I want to do is I actually want to have a statement or a response from Scratch that tells me which value is the bigger value. And so, well, how do I check that? Well, let's find out. If I'm interested in which value is the bigger value, I'm going to use the greater than, because that's how I test to see something is greater than. So I'm going to say, okay, if value 1 is greater than value 2, then what should I say? Well, if value 1 is greater than value 2, then I should say that the first value is larger. And if value 1, now what if value 1 is not greater than value 2? It'd be very easy to say, oh, well, that takes care of it. If value 1 is greater than value 2, then the first value is larger. Otherwise, I say the second value is larger. Now, obviously, I'm setting this up. You can probably tell that this is not going to work if for no other reason than because it's suspicious the way that I'm doing this. So I'm going to go ahead and run this. What's the first value? The first value is 10. What is the second value? The second value is 5. And 10 is actually bigger than 5, so the first value is larger. I'm going to try running it again. This time I'm going to put in my first value is going to be equal to 2. And my second value is going to be equal to 4. So the second value is 4, the second value is larger. Okay, great. So this seems to be working fine. But the place where this is going to fail is I'm going to enter my first value is 3, my second value is 3, and it's still saying the second value is larger. So the first value being larger, that's working just fine. But if that's true, the first value is larger, the problem is this else statement is catching everything else. So not only is it catching when the second value is larger, but it's also catching when the two values are equal. And I would like to be able to tell when the two values are equal as well. So it's not good enough for me just to automatically say the second value is larger. What I have to do is I'm going to add another if statement inside there. And now I check and see if the first value is larger. But if the first value isn't larger, I have to make a decision, another decision, a second selection on, now I have to say, okay, well, in that case, is the second value larger? So I can check for that. So now I'm going to check and see if value 2 is bigger than value 1. So I check to see if value 1 was bigger than value 2. And if that's false, then I'm going to go deeper into this selection structure. Now I'm going to check and see if value 2 is bigger than value 1. If that's the case, then I should say the second value is larger. But what happens if the first one is false and the second one is false? What other thing could I say here? And that's the last option. So then we would say the two values are equal. So now we have that third option. If value 1 is greater than value 2, if that's true, we execute this code. If value 2 is greater than value 1, then we execute this code. And if neither of those two conditions are true, if they both turn out to be false, then we're going to say that the two values are equal. So what's the first value? Let's go right back and try equal. 3 equals 3. That produced a